Oh, hello. I don't know. Push the button. There's a green light on.
Okay. So he's
Can you hear me now? Raise your hand if you can hear us. Can't hear us. You there? Okay.
We are here.
You got one more coming? You ready to start? Roger?
We are ready to start now.
Okay. I'll call to order the January 18th, 2018 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. Clerk, please call roll.
Director Richardson? Here. Williams? Wolf?
Here, and Director Williams just said he's on a phone call. He'll be in shortly.
Okay, thank you. Director Hartman? Here. Adam?
Following but here.
Lavanino? Andrzic?
Here.
Clark? Lizalde?
Here.
Aceves?
Here.
Dominguez? Here. Patino? And Chair Mosby.
Here. At this time, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, the first item of business is election of the chair and the vice chair for 2018. Looking for motions. Nominations.
I just had a question. Is there any protocol? Do we alternate city and county, or it just can be anyone? What's the past practice?
We don't have a specified protocol. What we decided to do for this agenda item for your benefit today was list out who has been chair and vice chair over the past 10 years to give some indication of how things have progressed. But it's at the discretion of the board as far as who's elected for the chair and the vice chair.
We'll need some music here, right? How's it go?
Who's not here? I would suggest because Lavanino's not here. Since Janet is vice chair, could she be? I'm looking the wrong time. Doss Williams should be the chair. That falls into the wrong.
Yeah, he's got to be chair of the board this year, of the supervisors, so it may be a burden to do both, but he's not here to speak for himself.
That's okay. That's the best time.
I'd be willing to nominate Joan.
I would too, but she gets. Well, I think Joan is doing two jobs already. Chair of SB.
I'll second that.
She's going to escape that momentarily. So give her a second job safely.
She's already here.
If she agrees, I would say.
Let me just suggest Supervisor Lavanino hasn't served since 2012, and he's not here. So I think we may have a strategy.
All right, so retracting all motions. What's your new motion?
My motion to be nominate Steve Lavanino as the chair.
Is it completely fair to do this?
I think so.
A lot of head nods. There's a second on that one. Here's the difficult, well, I guess because we'll have a vice chair that'll take over as soon as I step out. So I guess we can do that and worry about the vice chair. So we got a first and a second?
I didn't hear the
Second?
What's the motion?
What's the motion?
This was for Supervisor Lavanito to be chairing. So we have a first and a second.
Okay.
Any more discussion?
Call for the vote.
Let's call for a vote.
I apologize. Who was the second on that one? Okay, thank you. Okay, Director Richardson? Aye. Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman. Aye. Adam.
Aye.
Andrezek.
Aye.
Aceves.
Aye.
Lizalde. Dominguez. And Chair Mosby.
Aye. Now to complicate it, now we need a vice chair.
I don't see,
Well, I don't know if he wants or not, but I'll nominate Lizalde.
You had a nomination for Lizalde. Mr. Aceves nominated with a second with Richards. Discussion? Let's call for the vote.
Director Richardson. Wolf. Hartman. Adam. Andrezek.
aye.
Aceves.
Aye.
Lizalde. Dominguez. And Mosby.
Aye. So, time to, no, I can change it. I'd change it. Vice chair gets it. You get it. Yeah, we're rotating chairs. Mandate. Do you want the solid chair instead of the wheelchair?
Yes. Look at this.
Tuck you in.
What a group. Where are we? Ooh. Okay, so we have a chair and a vice chair, correct? Yes? And welcome, everybody. Going on to item number 4, approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Here, a first and a second. Vote, please.
Director Richardson. Wolf.
Aye.
Hartman. Adam. Andrezek. Aceves.
Abstain.
Mosby. Dominguez. And Chair Lizalde.
I abstain.
Okay, and the motion passes.
Motion passes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, administrative items. Approved by vote on one motion. These items read only on request of board members. Is there any item that the board would like to pull? I hear none. Do I hear a motion to approve? Okay. Vote. Madam
Okay.
Clerk.
Director Richardson. Wolf.
Aye.
Hartman. Adam. Andrezek. Aceves. Mosby. Dominguez. And Chair Lizalde.
Aye.
Okay, and the motion passes.
Motion passes. Okay, moving on to item 6. Do we, public comment, period? Do we have any public comments?
I have no speaker slips.
No speaker slips. Moving on to item number 7, director's report.
Good afternoon, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a few items I'd like to provide a brief update on. The first one, our Community Advisory Council met last Thursday, January 11th. We discussed 3 different items, changes to the bylaws regarding the meeting date and the frequency, amendments to District Rule 1304, which is EPA's major source of air pollution, issuing of e-noticing of permit actions, And then the last rule amendment we discussed was District Rule 360. This was part of our ozone plan and the NOx measure, one of the first NOx measures that we brought before our council. And that was emissions of oxides of nitrogen from large heaters and small boilers. All three of those items will be brought back to your board for consideration at the March meeting. Next up, I wanted to give you an update on a study that the California Air Resources Board is conducting statewide to characterize air quality in communities near oil and gas operations throughout California. It's called the Study of Neighborhood Air Near Petroleum Sources. The acronym is SNAPS. They're taking a mobile monitoring trailer throughout the state and trying to get better characterization of the impacts these oil and gas activities have on residential communities. They have a public meeting coming up next week in Ventura. That's the closest public meeting for our county, and we will be having one staff attend who actually lives in Ventura. So due to the 101 being closed, that staff is perfectly situated to attend this meeting. ARB has not yet established a date when they'll be traveling through our county, but penciling in the month of February for that to occur. And then I wanted to bring to your attention, you have a flyer. It's in front of you as it relates to, I don't have it here, unfortunately, the award ceremony for the Protecting Blue Sky, or Blue Wells, Blue Skies program. It's held on Thursday, March the 1st in the afternoon down in Wilmington, California. The location is situated to entice and gain better participation from the vessel shipping operators. We held a similar ceremony last year at the Santa Barbara Zoo. It was amazing. We had a huge amount of rain, huge storm that day, and we actually were successful in getting some of the shipping companies in town. But we thought this year, since it recognizes not just what's happened in the Santa Barbara Channel, but also up in the San Francisco Bay Area, having it down in LA, we can gain better participation. We wanted to make you all aware of it and invite any of you who would also like to attend this ceremony. We have a community meeting that we've been working with the City of Goleta on in regards to H2S odors. The meeting date is being hosted by the City of Goleta, and we've been working with the city, the county, environmental health, public health, the ag commissioners, and fire on a number of complaints that have occurred in western Goleta area. The community meeting is being set. It was originally set in January, but due to the Thomas fire, it's been postponed. A new date has not yet been established, likely to occur sometime in March. We will be there along with the other agencies to talk about our agency's roles and responsibilities as it relates to H2S from various sources. The source of concern that's causing the impact recently is from an agricultural source. So our regulatory authority is limited as far as it relates to nuisance, and just providing some explanation to the Air Pollution Control District roles and responsibilities. We'll be augmenting this with the other agencies who also have different roles and responsibilities. Before continuing, I see we have a question.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is that an ongoing issue, or is that?
You know, it ebbs and flows. And
Really?
historically speaking, I know that region has had experiences with H2S odors. If you remember last year, we had a water well that was a very deep water well that was causing a significant impact in the area. This year, what we're noticing is more from the ag irrigation practices. And different times of year, it seems
So that well was the well that was causing the problem has been
resolved. Yeah,
and
they plugged that well and they went to a
Okay.
different location, so it's not the same source,
Okay.
but it's another ag operation and just the water
Okay.
in the area
Okay.
that we continue to be challenged with and have
Okay.
impacts in the community.
Okay, thank you.
And let's see, the last item, I'd like to welcome a new staff to our agency. Rachel Silva joined the APCD on December 4th as an accounting supervisor. Ms. Silva, she was born and raised in the Central Coast. She currently lives in Santa Maria. She graduated from UC Santa Barbara with a bachelor's degree in law and society and has over 20 years of accounting experience. So please join me in welcoming Rachel to our team.
Welcome. Welcome, welcome.
And that concludes the APCO report.
All right, any other questions for our director? None? Okay, moving on to item 8, discussion items.
All right. Item number 1 is to adopt and present a resolution of appreciation to Helene Snyder for her service on the Air Pollution Control District Board of Directors. And I don't believe Helene is here
She
today.
isn't here. She isn't here, so
So if we can adopt.
we can adopt it? That by vote or by?
Yes.
Okay. Hear a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved?
Here a motion
Second.
and a second. Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Director Richardson? Wolf?
Could there be discussion?
Sure.
I just wondered, so are we just going to give it to her, or when we're in Santa Barbara, could we have it and actually present it to her and say some nice things about her long service?
We could?
Yeah.
Okay.
It will be in the middle of the year. We don't meet in Santa Barbara
it's
until,
Ever.
is it our June
June.
meeting?
Yeah.
June.
Do we have another meeting here? Locate, can it just be here in Santa Maria and
Okay. Yeah, let's just work it out. I mean, she was much engaged and really has made a contribution, so it seems like we ought to acknowledge that in a more formal
Sure.
way, if that's possible.
Of course, of course. And on that matter, anybody who has longevity in the Air Pollution Control Board and so on and been committed as long as she has, at least it is the right thing to do to recognize anyone who's been a member in good standing and so on. So, definitely. So we'll work it out whether located here or at another time at Air Pollution Control Board meeting. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
We didn't know.
Yes. Well, yeah, we're still voting on the motion.
Okay, so this is the motion to approve the resolution of appreciation for Helene Snyder. And Richardson was an aye, and Director Wolf?
Yes, it was a second.
Thank you.
Oh, aye. Sorry.
Hartman? Aye. Adam? Aye. Andrezek?
Aye.
Aceves?
Aye.
Mosby? Aye. Dominguez?
Aye.
Patino? Aye. And Chair Lozalde?
Aye.
Okay,
Passes.
the motion passes.
Item number 2.
Item number 2 is to select 3 members of the board to serve on the APCD Executive Committee during calendar year 2018.
Do I hear any nominees? Looking over. Here's where I could do a payback. Feel powerful now. Yeah. Any volunteers? And who do we have that? Do we have the committee
Should be the chair, vice chair.
board? Number 2. So we had chair was Mr. Mosby, Director Mosby. Is that correct? Board member, Director Adams, and board member Williams. Is there any? Is it William? Is it? Excuse me. I'm sorry. Is there any precedence for as far as line of leadership, or it's just random again?
There has been a pattern. It has been the chair, the vice chair, and then the former chair over the past recent years. That's been the format that's been followed.
There's not too many
I'll
road
make
trips
that
on
motion.
this body here.
No.
I would move we continue with that process.
Okay, good. Second.
So we have our chairman, Levanino, is that what you're saying? And vice chair and 1 board member. Previous chair?
Well, be the past chair.
Okay. appointments.
Mr. Chair, we can't hear when directors are speaking unless they put their microphone on.
The motion is to follow the same procedure for current chair, current vice chair, and past chair for the executive committee. That's the motion.
So for the record, that would be Mr. Lavanino as chair, Mr. Lizaldi as vice chair, and Mr. Mosby as past chair.
Okay.
Second, yeah.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Director Richardson? Aye. Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam? Aye. Andrezek? Aye. Aceves?
Aye.
Mosby?
Aye.
Dominguez? Aye. Patino?
Aye.
And Chair Lizalde.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, item number 3.
Item number 3 is to appoint one board member to serve as a representative to the South Central Coast Basin-wide Control Council during calendar year 2018.
So we have to, any volunteers? Any nominations? Description on that board, brief.
So this is a basin council that meets theoretically every quarter. However, with meeting conflicts, it's been meeting maybe twice a year, unfortunately. It gets together the Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and Ventura representatives. It consists of the APCO and appointed board member, and it talks about issues and items that are shared amongst the 3 different agencies and things that are happening statewide. I know Janet has a lot of experience over the years. I think you're probably our longest standing BCC member, and if you want to add anything else to it.
Well, I always found those meetings really interesting. It's always good to hear from other agencies, particularly our neighbors, San Luis and Ventura. And they did meet quarterly. And, it's kind of fascinating. And so, yeah, I enjoyed it for the 2 years that I was on. I have talked to Steve, and I think he might wish to be replaced and have someone else serve. I don't necessarily want to speak for him, but I think if there was someone else that would do it, he would be grateful. And like I said, it is interesting to see what the other air districts are doing.
And one thing to note, the meetings take place at the Santa Barbara office, so it's not a matter of traveling out of the region to attend the meeting. They typically last an hour and a half total, and if we were meeting as we intend to once a quarter, 4 times, it's pretty convenient for us compared to the other agencies or other regions that have to drive in and out.
Director Wolf, would you be interested in?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, though. I'm wondering, is Mr. Clark is on APCD?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that right? I'd like to,
Would you like to nominate Mr. Clark? Is that what you're saying?
I would like to nominate Al Clark.
Okay. We have a nomination and a second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Roll call, please.
Director Richardson? Aye. Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Aye. Adam? Aye. Andrezek?
Aye.
Aceves?
Aye.
Mosby?
Aye.
Dominguez?
Aye.
Patino? Aye. And Chair Lizalde.
Aye. Unanimous.
Okay.
Okay, item number 4.
Item number 4 is to select 5 members of the board to serve on the APCD Hearing Board Nominating Committee during the calendar year 2018.
I would move that the board makeup remains the same as 2017.
There's a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
So for the record, Mr. Chair, that's Mr. Williams, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Richardson, Mr. Adam, and Mr. Patino, Ms. Patino, excuse me.
Okay.
I'll
There's a motion and a
that,
second.
And there looks like there is some precedent from 2015 and 2016, so I'll second that motion.
Roll call, please.
Okay, Director Richardson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Hartman? Adam? Andrezek? Seves?
Aye.
Mosby? Dominguez? Patino? And Chair Lizalde.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to number 5.
Item number 5 is to receive a report on the Thomas Fire, its impacts to air quality, and the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District's response during the fire.
All right, I'll be presenting on this topic today, and I need the PowerPoint. First off, I want to acknowledge when I was pulling this PowerPoint together, it was before, we put this on the agenda before the mudslides happened, and you know, it's, whoa. Ben, I might need help if I'm clicking crazy already. It's not a good sign. And it seemed, after going through everything that the community is going through right now, it seems that the fires, in a way, seem less important than they did when we were in the middle of them. But I thought it would be very important to spend some time highlighting what occurred here in our region from an air quality point of view, the different roles and responsibilities that our agency carried out. It was amazing the magnitude of involvement from our staff. We have a staff currently of 35 staff, and 1/3 of our staff was involved in responding to this fire. It took us a lot of staff time. We worked hours, not typical Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. We're not first responders, so that's something that my staff volunteered, jumped in, and engaged right away. And I'm very proud of the response and the dedication from my staff through this fire. So I just want to go through and highlight some of the main aspects. This was not a typical wildfire, and our region has its share of wildfires over the last few years in particular, but not just then, over the decades. This definitely was not a typical fire for us. The impacts, it started obviously in Ventura County in Santa Paula on December the 4th, and then it kind of lingered outside on the coast and didn't hit us immediately. But once it hit us, it stuck around for a very long time. Typically when we have wildfires, they seem to go up and out. This one, the smoke went up, out, back in, around, and it just blanketed our communities, and we had extreme conditions. This chart demonstrates the 24-hour air quality index, and it is off of PM2.5. So we have on our webpage the AQI for ozone, PM10, which is the coarse particulate matter, and then 2.5, which is the finer that has a larger impact to our cardiac and respiratory systems. You can see here we had from the 5th to the 17th, we were recording unhealthy air quality conditions in the county. This December 7th in Santa Barbara, we were at unhealthy levels, or very unhealthy levels, and actually during the day there were hourly ratings that were hazardous. During this fire, Santa Barbara County experienced the worst air pollution in the nation. And it, like I said, because it hung around for so long, we were impacted, and then we saw the intensity of the effects it have on all of us. Just for effect. Throughout the entire duration of the fire. On this chart, you can see the top 4 lines, the Santa Barbara through the Goleta. Those are our permanent particulate matter stations. The lower 3, the Carpinteria, Santa Ynez, and Los Alamos, those are portable monitors that we were able to deploy. So that's why we didn't have ratings for the air quality index earlier at the beginning of the fire. So So during the 13 days of unhealthy air quality, we experienced it obviously outdoors, but we were even challenged with indoor environments, and that was one of our primary messages, is trying to create a clean room in your house. If you were staying in the area, if you were sensitive to air pollution, whether you are young with asthma or elderly, we wanted to make sure you protected your health and the health of your family, and you're able to create a clean room. And if you weren't able to do that, one of our key messages were we recommend that you leave the area to ensure that you have an environment that keeps you healthy. We deployed EBAMs, as I mentioned. Those are the portable devices in the 3 regions. We have one EBAM on site that is ours. We had to go and ask from the CARPA, the California Air Resources Planning Alliance, which is managed by the Air Resources Board, to secure 2 additional. The ironic part about that, CARPA distributes the EBAMs throughout the state during wildfire season. In November, they took the 2 EBAMs that we had in our county back for annual maintenance. Everyone thought that we get to December, wildfire season's done. We could take those EBAMs back, we can do our annual maintenance and get them back in shape for next year. I think we're all learning a lesson. Our wildfire seasons, who knows the wildfire seasons, but they were very willing and got the EBAMs back to us in a pretty quick turnaround time. We were also able to reach out to agencies that we haven't been to before. The school and the library in Los Alamos, we were able to get an EBAM deployed with electricity and have access to an area that best suits that community. Same goes for the city of Carpinteria at the City Hall. We were able to get the station set up really quick. So just having those contacts, it's very much appreciated. And we also had Santa Ynez, and that was at the airport, and it's an area where we have actually deployed EBAMs over the past for I'm going to say the typical wildfires that we've experienced. So interagency coordination is key. We were able to get connected in with the Emergency Operations Center. They had daily meetings. We were there at 9 a.m. for the morning debrief. There was also an 11 a.m. call with elected officials, both local, state, and federal officials, to provide updates on air quality issues, but all sorts of issues. We were involved in those. 4 p.m., we had staff attending the town hall meeting. Those were also televised. And if we were requested, we attended city council meetings, like the city of Carpinteria requested our participation in the city council meetings. Our joint messaging, we worked extremely close with county public health on our joint messaging. In the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we also did a lot of interviews, and we shared those primarily with public health. Dr. Dean and I were involved in a lot of different interviews, and use of social media was very important, both in English and in Spanish. With the impact to the U.S. forest, we were able to have an air resources advisor assigned to our region, and that individual has expertise doing air quality forecast. Very fortunate, Michael Broughton was the ARA, the Air Resources Advisor, assigned to our region, and we're fortunate because he actually was a former employee from our district. He knew the environment, he knew the microclimates within our county, so it was a very nice asset to what we were doing and a benefit to our in-house team that is just starting to do air quality forecasting. So how we went about advisories, we worked with the health department. We had a very long list of distribution outlets that we provided to get the message out. We issued 13 advisories between December 5th and the 29th. We received more than 200 phone calls, well over 100 emails that we responded to each of those. We were included in 80 media articles, and about a third of those, or a quarter of those, actually had quotes from our staff. So we were able to really get the message out in a number of ways. Our primary push was to get individuals to our air quality information that's on our website. We had forecasted air quality conditions and hourly conditions as well. We wanted everyone to have a better understanding of their current air quality so they could make a decision on what they needed to do to protect their health. So we got the word out on our website, and it had positive results. We had 200-fold increase in our website views, during this wildfire. So it was a very useful resource for a number of individuals. More than 1 million page views in December of last year, 2017. You compare that to 8,000 typically. So this is something that's actually addressed later in lessons learned. When you have emergencies like this, what's so important is to make sure that your website has the capacity to handle all of that attention. And in the midst of this wildfire, we actually had to work with our website provider and do a slight modification on the fly to carry the capacity. And we were biting our nails, fingers crossed that it would work, and fortunately it was a success and we didn't have any downtime, which we were relieved not to have. Social media was a huge benefit for us as far as reaching the end user. Twitter, number 3 source of getting folks to our website, but Nextdoor was also a huge benefit as well. And with Nextdoor, we actually have an account where we can reach all the communities throughout the county with messaging out to participants of the social media. And working so closely with the county on both the English and in the Spanish outlooks. So some of the new things that we were able to develop, the colorful map of our county, that was our forecast map, and using all of the stations, not only our permanent stations, but also the portable EBAMs, we were able to identify what monitoring station best served the individuals that reside within those specific areas of the county. So people could get a visual of, okay, where am I? What's the monitoring station I should be keying off of? Okay, what are my current conditions or my forecasted conditions? The other document that's to the right, that's the actual forecast that the Air Resources Advisor provided to us every morning. Typically, Mike would provide these once a day, but depending on conditions and if conditions were changing with the fire, containment, or the weather patterns, we might even have a couple different updates to his forecast services. This is showing how we had to translate, or we didn't have to, we were able to translate all of our information into Spanish. This is another lesson learned that I'll just touch on now. We translate what we do in Spanish currently, but the magnitude of messaging that we had to get out, it was with the benefit of the EOC and the translators that they had set up that we were able to get all of our information translated in Spanish at the quick turnaround that we needed, and then hosted up onto our website, onto the county's website, and they actually had a Twitter feed specifically for Spanish-speaking individuals. So common questions, like I said, 200 phone calls, if not more. 100 plus emails. People wanted to know all sorts of things. I mean, you would be surprised what people wanted to know. When is it going to go away? That was a common one as well. Where's my crystal ball? We were not quite sure how we were going to respond to when it will go away. But they were concerned about outdoor air quality, indoor air quality, wearing N95 masks. What can I do when I have a mask on? We definitely didn't want to have the message that you should put your mask on and go for a run outside. And then even with Dr. Dean, N95 masks are a challenge. Not everyone should wear an N95 mask. So that was a tricky wicket to navigate. Then what should I do? Should I stay here? Should I leave the area? So we just tried to provide all the information that's necessary in order for the correct decision for that individual to make to protect their health. Then ash. We all know the impacts of the ash that were experienced. And even when the fire was, we were still in the thick of the fire, people were wanting to clean up the ash. And that was one of the things that we really had to try to pull back on. We wanted to have the messaging as far as how to clean up the ash, but we didn't want folks to get out there and start cleaning it up when the ash was still falling and when the air quality conditions were really extreme that we were experiencing. So we worked to message that hold off on ash cleanup until the air quality conditions have improved. When you do go out and you do ash cleanup, we wanted to make sure that you were healthy, you didn't have any preconditions with your heart or your lungs, tips on how to do it, working with in public health. We even did messaging to landscape companies. We even worked with the municipalities as far as street sweepers. We needed to get ash off of the roads, but street sweepers have a tendency to kick up more ash. So we tried to work through, and we developed an ash management plan to make sure that the ash cleanup was occurring, but in a way that reduced the amount of debris that was being kicked up. And also that made individuals aware that we're doing this for the long-term benefit, so we don't have more ash stirred up with it just sitting on our streets. So tricky, very tricky challenges when you think about messaging that seems so simple at times. Lessons learned, I hit on some of these already. Our staffing, we had a great team, as I mentioned. It hit everything from our monitoring staff, our communications, public information officer, our forecast team, a lot of people in our T division. Compliance was called in as well as it relates to asbestos cleanup and the use of leaf blowers. Technology, we had to be prepared for the website and handling this volume. We also had to be prepared for other things that just happened. For example, Goleta Station. You know, when air quality is this extreme, people are really tuned in to looking at our website. But we had to make sure that our stations were operating properly. And what do you know? Goleta particulate matter station dies. Our technicians, our monitoring staff get out there, try to fix it right away. Well, it's not going to be fixable. We had to replace our PM monitor completely in order to get that back online. Our team was able to get out there and to get it up and running. So we were very fortunate. We had a backup PM monitor that we were able to replace our existing with another one. Interagency coordination is essential. You know, the Emergency Operations Center, it started operating, but we weren't linked into it yet. And I actually happened to be out of the area. I was in Kentucky, of all places, and I get a call from Rob Lewin. Goes, Aaron, you're not at the EOC meetings. I'm like, oh, what EOC meetings? And so the light went off. Okay, you need to be engaged. So now we have the protocol where we're getting all of the emails, we're getting all of the text to our phone. We are in sync now with the EOC. So this will help us for future emergencies that involve air quality in the future. That Air Resources Advisor was essential. The quicker and sooner we can get that specialist on site, the more accurate information that we'll be able to relay to the general public. The evergreen resources. Some of these things we want to get people aware of before the emergency actually happens. The use of N95 masks, the clean rooms, how to create a clean room in your house, the use of HEPA filters, whether it's for a purifier in your house or your vacuum. Those are some ongoing messaging that we think are important for us to continue outside of an emergency, just to bring the overall awareness up. The positives, like I said, our team in emergency, we can do it. And I'm very proud of what we were able to do and how they were just so dedicated to making sure we were well represented wherever we were requested to be. So with a small staff, I was impressed we were able to deliver and be as responsive as we were. And our relationship with our partnerships, we've really been able to build those over the years, and having those strong relationships helped us get in quickly with the EOC once Rob and I realized, wait, this is happening and we're not even aware of it. And you know what was really nice to hear is the appreciation from the general public. We got a lot of messages, excuse me, from the social media, from emails, even from text, from people out in the community thanking us for the air quality information that was made available to them. So on the last slide, I just want to thank my staff for everything they've been able to do, but really it's the first responders. All of our government agencies, our nonprofit groups, Red Cross did so much during this, and they continue to do so much in the ongoing cleanup efforts associated with the mud slides. So that ends my report.
Thank you, thank you. This is just a report and receive. Oh, okay, we have one speaker slip.
I have a speaker slip from Frank Peters.
Okay, Mr. Peters, welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name's Frank Peters. I'm a resident of Santa Barbara. I'm also a member of your Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board, so enjoy participating in these sessions. You see my little bicycle emblem here. I'm also on the board of the Santa Barbara Bike Coalition. And all these things I'm doing, I'm looking for opportunities to like cross-pollinate. So back in, I think, September, October, I asked Erin if she would be a guest at the next board meeting of the Bike Coalition. At that time, I guess it was November. So she came in. I told her she had 20 minutes to present before the meeting. As she sits down, the board president told her she had 15 minutes. She spoke for 45. Now, nobody moved or had any concerns about. I think 10 people on our board were hypnotized. The opportunity to learn about air pollution was something they, I think, were keen to learn more of. Now, we have our next board meeting, the only one since that time, after the fire, next week. And in preparations for that board meeting, I have heard from everyone on my board about how timely it was to have Erin come and speak to us to basically, we're advocates for active transportation, and to quite an extent now, they're also advocates for clean air and everything that goes with that. So I go from meeting to meeting. I was at a supervisor's meeting, I think not long ago, talking about disaster preparedness. I heard from the board. So I go home and I tell my wife, and what do you know? She goes out and orders a great big box of N95 masks about a month before we needed them. So in a microscopic contribution in my little building, I was handing out N95 masks to my neighbors and some of the people that work cleaning up around the building. They were asking me how to set up a clean room, and I was able to share that with them. Well, what else do I share with them is pay attention to what the air quality monitoring stations are telling us. And that's the reason I wanted to stand up and speak, is I think maybe I have a suggestion, a constructive idea as to how you might improve that when, of course, many of us might have apps on our phone that would tell us what the air quality index is for our particular area. And that, as we all know, is a summation, some formula. Don't ask me exactly what the formula is, but it includes ozone, PM10, and PM2.5. But I noticed that when I referred some of my neighbors and friends to
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
You're 3 minutes up, if you could culminate.
I'll wrap up right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyway, my suggestion is that perhaps some of my neighbors were confused when they looked at the numbers on the page. They see the ozone, PM10, PM2.5. Some are green, some are yellow, and some are purple that day. I think it might be human nature to pick the color that you like best and interpret the suitability of going outside and breathing the air. So my suggestion is perhaps you could show those three numbers, if somebody wanted to drill down a level, but present the more common AQI value. Thank you.
Thank you. No other speaker slips? Okay. So that is a report and received. Okay. Moving on to number 6.
All right, item number 6.
Excuse me, could I make a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chair Lizaldi. Thank you very much for the report. I guess and I know the ash was not as bad in Santa Maria. It was bad, but then I drove down to Santa Barbara because I had to go to a meeting, and it was like snowflakes on the ground. So it was really different. But I walked out of I do a radio show in the morning before our city council meeting. I walk out, and here's a landscape guy across the street with the leaf blowers. So I immediately called our city manager and said, we need to get the message out to these people. It just seems like all these messages got out afterwards. And as I drove around, I saw other people with leaf blowers. I'm surprised my husband wasn't out there. That's why he cleans the yard. But I'm just wondering how much our responsibility to make sure that, because the air is very important and the masks are very important. I went down to the fire station and got masks for everyone in my neighborhood. But what about control burns so this doesn't happen again? Because at least you know when the air quality isn't going to be good and you can plan it. And to educate the people on prevention around their homes. We know preventive medicine is the best medicine. And when we were kids, we used to do fire drills. I have no idea if they do fire drills. I guess I saw one at a junior high when I was at a junior high last year. But and preparing for emergencies. I know in Santa Maria we have a program called Listos, which is in Spanish, which is very productive. But we also go into our churches and prepare people in the churches as first responders, because half of our first responders don't live in the city limits. So you wonder what kind of emergency is going to happen to us. And I would never have thought that 101 would ever close because of a mudslide. I mean, I thought, yeah, that'll never happen. But it did. And we have first responders that live down there that belong to the city of Santa Maria. We have first responders that live up in Northern California. Mm-hmm. And so all these things that we need to prepare our community for, and I don't know how much was done, but I just wonder who has the responsibility for example, control burns. We've had people from Tepiscay, which was the Alamo fire, coming and asking us to do something about it, and that's out of our jurisdiction, but it certainly is the county's. And people have been asking the county for a long time about control burns. And so I think those kinds of preparations, I think we really need to do. And maybe we need to take the lead on this board. Maybe we need to go to the Board of Supervisors and ask them. But it's a real concern to me, because this was deadly. This was absolutely deadly.
On the topic of prescribed burns, this has been an issue that's been brought up at the state legislative level as well. And there's been a task force assigned between CAL FIRE and the California Air Resources Board to work through what is necessary to enable prescribed burns to be utilized to minimize the impacts of wildfires. That's just now starting. Locally here, I was in a meeting, it was a few months back, I think, or maybe a month and a half ago. I don't recall exactly when. Steve Lavanino requested a meeting with the Air Pollution Control District, Ag Commission, County Fire, Public Works as well, from the impact to our water sources, trying to work through the issues. There's a lot of challenges in there, and it's just a matter of all of us getting together and figuring out how to work it through. With the use of resources being one of the most important challenges, I think, from County Fire and our agency as well. So those conversations, what I'm trying to indicate, are they're happening, and we can definitely learn more as far as what's provided at the statewide level to help enable the use of prescribed burns when the air quality conditions and other conditions are in such a way that it reduces the overall impact.
I don't mean to be flippant, but the Indians did control burns, for years and years and years. And I guess when we have to go through so much bureaucracy when deadly events like this happen is just, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Good points.
I have a question too, down here.
Is that
the thing I've heard post facto on the fires and in terms of APCD's role is it was really great to have the temporary stations. Why can't they stay? And is that a cost question? Is the cost question how expensive it is to have permanent monitoring stations versus temporary? I guess the sentiment that I've heard from both Carpentry and Valley residents is sort of like, well, doesn't our lungs matter too? Why can't we have one too? So I just wanted to ask, what's the kind of the limiting factors in that?
Yeah, we're actually going through an analysis right now on our monitoring network, trying to figure out the locations of all of our monitors and if they're best serving all of the residents and communities throughout the county. And we will be bringing that to the public and your board in a few months. Looking at that, cost is always an issue. The use of resources is also a challenge. And also mapping out where the network currently exists and how it, under normal operating conditions, characterizes the entire region. Traditionally, for Carpinteria, for example, the Santa Barbara station typically represents the air quality in Carpinteria. Under this monumental event with the impacts so close to Carpinteria, we obviously, under the values in the Santa Barbara station, didn't fully characterize that in Carpinteria. What would have been most ideal for us if we had an EBAM in place and we were able to deploy that in a much quicker turnaround. And that, to me, is one of our primary lessons learned, is having more of the portables that we can maneuver in an expeditious fashion if we don't have a permanent station there. As we go through our monitoring assessment, that's something that we will be discussing as far as the overall costs and the benefits and the characterization that our network will provide the entire county. So we'll be bringing that to your attention soon.
My only other suggestion would be is if you're looking at establishing a site, that if there's multiple ones in, within 10 or 20 miles, having one that's close to the freeway and one that's not is probably also relevant of a difference in air quality on a more continuous basis.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Director Wolf, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to compliment you and your staff at APCD, the work that you did in not only educating the public, but the outreach was exceptional. I was at those special meetings at San Marcos High School that occurred every day, and on most occasions, you had a representative from APCD there, which was greatly appreciated. And to the North County folks, we talked about this a little bit at SBCAG to talk about our appreciation for you sending your first responders down to Santa Barbara and Montecito. During the fire, there was also a lot of cooperation and exceptional things that the North County did for those of us down here, namely opening up hotel rooms and motel rooms at a discounted rate. A lot of people had to leave Santa Barbara and go to North County, and so I just want to express appreciation to all of the folks up there who helped us down here. People were monitoring where the masks were available. I remember there were some locations up in the North County that ran out of masks. We seemed to have a lot down here, but North County didn't have as many, at least I recall, in certain areas of the North County. So, I think this is, really treading on a lot of new information for a lot of us, but there was so much good collaboration, and I'm really excited to hear about Aaron's interaction with folks at the EOC. That's what that is all about, and to get the bilingual information out with the use of the JIC at the EOC is really something to be proud of. So I just think you have done an exceptional job, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Any more comments from Santa Barbara?
I have a question. If there's a way to calculate or estimate the total costs, either in dollar cost or resources, for the pollutants that were released into the air as a result of the fire.
Total cost. I don't think I can answer that. I'd have to spend some time thinking about the information that we would even need to make that type of calculation. We have to work beyond just our agency and talk with the public health as well. I'm not familiar of a formula readily available, but I would definitely have to take some time and talk to my colleagues up in the Bay Area who have probably been asked the same type of question as it comes from the Sonoma fires. But we have not calculated the total cost to the community associated with the fires.
Would it be one of the statewide agencies that might be on that task?
I'm sorry, I apologize, I'll have to get back with a response. I'm not familiar with the calculation.
And the reason I ask is the idea about controlled burns or even just more aggressive removal of vegetation to prevent this. If we know how much this cost us, then we know how much we have in our budget to prevent it.
Yeah, it's probably something that is being discussed at the statewide level, as I described that new legislative committee between CAL FIRE and the California Air Resources Board. To me, this is the information that they would need in order to justify one option versus another option, and the resources that it takes to respond to a wildfire versus the resources it takes to do prescribed burns in a patchwork application. So I'll do some research, and that's something I could provide back to the board in future meetings.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Janet again.
Yes.
Aaron, thank you. Have you, I know that the county and some of the other agencies calculate overtime for the employees who are working during these incidents so that there can be reimbursement. Does our organization have a way to calculate that so that you can make a request because of the emergency?
Yeah.
Have people been keeping track of their time?
We've definitely been keeping track of our time. We have exempt employees primarily that were working extra hours, so it's not tracked the same as hourly employees are tracked. This is something that's been discussed within the CAPCOA, the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association, as far as the amount of time and resources it takes air quality agencies to respond to wildfires and how it falls beyond any of our existing funding sources. And subvention funds is something that our agency has received that have not been increased since they were started back in the early 90s, and it's something that the legislature has been kicking around as far as an increase to subvention funds. Wildfire response is part of the justification for the potential increase, and it's something that I know will be discussed in this coming legislative session. But Janet, I'm not aware of a mechanism for us to recover the cost associated with our response to the wildfire.
If I could maybe suggest that Mr. Dillon research this, just because it was declared as a major emergency, and just perhaps, and rather than it just being a wildfire, maybe there's another option. And that's all. I just think we should look into it.
Okay. Suggestion made.
But obviously, that's up to you, Aaron. But I think we should ask Mr. Dillon to explore it further, just to confirm.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, staff. There was a suggestion to research.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I see no further discussion. Report and receive. Moving on to number 6.
Item number 6 is to receive and file information about educational projects with portable air quality sensors.
And I'm going to hand the baton over to Mary. You guys have heard plenty from me recently. So, Mary, if you don't mind introducing the entire team, we have a treat for you as far as a number of presenters on this subject. Very fortunate.
Welcome. Welcome. Yeah.
Okay. We're here to talk this afternoon about our experience with portable air sensors and also our partnerships in the community, how we're learning more and we're using these sensors in educational opportunities and also evaluating the data. So here today joining me is Jennifer Hernandez Mora. She's a senior at Santa Maria High School. She participated in the Summer Science Institute that Ricardo Magni runs at Allen Hancock College. She received an award last year for a project measuring particles with a Dylos air sensor for the California State Science Fair, and then also a special prize from the South Coast Air Quality Management District for an Air Quality Award. So she is actually currently in the process of comparing results from a new type of sensor, purple air sensor, against what she did last year. so she'll talk about that. Ricardo Magni is an award-winning teacher. We've worked with him for several years in our Care for Our Earth program. He won the Presidential Innovation Award for Environmental Educators and was also County Teacher of the Year. He's currently implementing a program in his classroom at Pioneer Valley High School with AP students on using purple air sensors, and he's about to start a program coaching other teachers in the county on using sensors. And then I'm very pleased to welcome, stand up, Dr. Andrea Polidori, who made the trek up here successfully from South Coast Air Quality Management District. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for being here. He is Atmospheric Measurements Manager at the South Coast Air Quality Management District. They are a leading agency in understanding air sensors. They have an advanced lab, and they also have an EPA project that they're implementing with air sensors, and he's going to talk a little bit about that. So let me just start by talking about our experience here. I'm going to try to move this over a little bit. At the district. Whoops. That wasn't what I wanted. Whoops. Sorry. Hang on. Technical difficulties. Okay. So we have had kind of a two-pronged approach with air sensors. We want to gain experience with these sensors, understand the data, how they compare with our federal reference method monitoring equipment, and how we can learn from the experts such as Dr. Polidori and identify optimal uses for this. We're in very early stages of this. I just want to emphasize that because it's a fast changing technology. And another prong of our approach is to just explore the ways these can be used for educational opportunities in the classroom and with students, such as Jennifer. So we did a study at Cuyama Valley High School. Sonoma Technology helped us with that study. We were comparing two different types of portable air sensors against the federal reference method equipment, and we were also using it in a classroom setting with the teacher there. So in the results we reported to your board previously, the sensors were successful in detecting high episodes of particulate matter. They did track fairly well the federal equipment, the federal reference method equipment, but there were some gaps, and they were very useful as an educational tool, and we came out of that experience wanting to get more experience with air sensors. So we reached out to find out what were the sensors that they were testing at South Coast, that they were finding promising results from, and one of them was the purple air sensor, which is a low-cost sensor, and it measures particles in a variety of sizes, including PM 2.5, and it reports the data to a public website along with an air quality index rating. And this is very useful because some of these sensors do not report data out easily, so there's an immediate challenge getting the data and understanding the data. So there's an advantage to these, and we decided to try to gain some experience with these sensors. So we had deployed a few around the county, and we happened to have one in place at our Goleta monitoring station during the Thomas Fire. So again, we're just at very early stages of looking at this data, but in the comparison between the same air sampling at the same location, and the sensor was following the trend well, changing, going up when the other equipment was showing levels were rising, but there were much higher readings at times when the PM levels were highest. So we need to understand this better and how they might be impacted in a situation like we had during the wildfire, which is an extreme situation. So we're continuing to evaluate, continuing to look at them, and continuing to explore educational projects. So some of our early takeaways on this is we find that there's some variable accuracy among them, and yet there's an opportunity because they are so low cost. If we had a large network, we could get higher accuracy. They're useful in detecting trends, but we need to figure out what to tell the public about what that data means when we compare it with our federal reference method data, and how and what the delta might be between those levels. So we're very grateful to have experts in the field and have local experts as well. And I'm going to talk a little more now about this educational tool. And we're going to turn this over very soon to Jennifer.
Okay, hello everyone. So 2 summers ago, I decided to research what it was that I was breathing and that the inhabitants in my neighborhood were breathing. So what I did is I was using a Dylos DC1700 air quality monitor, which compared to what I'm using now, measures in a different way. I tested this with this monitor 4 times throughout the day, and what I was trying to look for was to see during what time of the day would the air quality be the worst in my neighborhood. So I went outside at 5 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and then 5 p.m. And originally my hypothesis was that the time at which the air quality would be the worst would be around the evening time, so like 5 p.m., because that's the time at which many people are commuting back from work and the time at which many people are going out to dinner and to restaurants. And the place that I live in is a very urban area. I live in the center of Santa Maria, kind of by Santa Maria Burger, by Broadway, which is a very busy street. So I wanted to see what it was that I was breathing. I was very surprised by the end of the 22 days that I tested that it was in the morning at which the air quality was considered to be the worst, and that time was 5 a.m. And what I took from that was that the people that live in my neighborhood are mainly in the agricultural field, so they go to work around 5 in the morning, and that's the time that I was testing at. And not just that, but there are stores outside my house like Smart & Final, which is a huge grocery store, and that's the time at which they are getting many deliveries for their items, and the semi-trucks are a big part of that pollution as well. Can you change the slide, please? So this year I am continuing my research. However, I'm using a different type of monitor, the purple air quality monitor, like what Mary was talking about. This monitor detects particulates that are actually smaller. However, I'm focusing more on the 2.5. Oh, this is a monitor itself. I have one of these outside of my home, and right now you can even look it up online on purpleair.com, and you can look at the AQI. I was looking at the AQI attentively while the Thomas Fire was going on, because many people were asking me, since they know that I have a monitor, many people from school especially were asking me, hey, what's the air quality? And so I would just give them the link. I would just give them the link, and they like to look at it. And even my parents were asking me, hey, is it okay? Are we going to be all right? And so I had to look at the purple air. Currently, I am wrapping up my results, so I'm still analyzing the data, so I don't have a conclusive conclusion. But this year, what I was focusing more on was to determine on which days was my neighborhood air quality meeting the national air quality standards, whereas last year I was focusing more on the times at which the air quality was the worst. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, gotta switch back and forth here.
I had a question.
Oh, yes.
At this, when you when they were high, let's say your ratings or low, and maybe it's a question for both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference in particles, whether that's extreme high or medium or low, as far as affecting the, people and so on, the danger?
When the air quality is worst, that usually means that there are more particulates present. Okay. And the smaller the particulates, the more harsh they can be to you. Like Ms. Erin was mentioning, if the particulates are smaller, you risk cardiac problems and respiratory problems, especially people that have asthma or the elderly. So I guess to answer your question, yes, there is a difference.
Okay.
Okay, so hi, I'm Ricardo Magni, and I teach science at Pioneer Valley High School. And so right now you can see on the right-hand side, of the bottom right of the picture, that's the monitor we have at the school, it's reading 24 for AQI when I snapshot at that moment in time. And you can see 3 of my 4 students that also have them deployed. This is a separate project from Jennifer's project. So we were fortunate enough that Mary was able to fund giving us 5 of these sensors. And so the kids can compare what's going on in their neighborhoods to what's going on at school. And if you expand this map, Google map, you can look anywhere in the world where there's purple air sensors, except China. They don't have any there. Seriously, you can't see what the pollution's like there. But I mean, you can look in Rome, Italy, or New Delhi, India. You can find any city that has these, and you can see where there's good air quality or maybe not so good air quality. So the students have been fascinated on comparing the air that they're breathing, which, like most people, we take it for granted unless we have a tragic event like the one we've experienced for the last, 4 to 6 weeks. The kids, I mean, normal teenagers take the air for granted here, right? I mean, that's what they do. Most people do. So this has been really good to spotlight for my students in AP Environmental Science that, hey, we're lucky. We live in a place with good air quality. And how good is it? Well, now we can monitor it and compare and actually use some data. And, of course, as Mary alluded to, and I think Andrea is going to talk about it more, for my purposes with the high school students, how accurate it is not necessarily as critical as the relevance of taking the time to look at it. They're looking at data, whether it's accurate to the exact micron or not. For our purposes, there's more inquiry and more investigation. I think that's the really key, that kids are looking at something that normally they wouldn't have really paid attention to. You guys, of course, hear about air pollution all the time, so it's not new for you. Mary, can you go to the next slide, please? So there were definitely pros and cons as to working with these purple air sensors. So the pros, real-time data. Kids can see right now what's happening literally in their backyard or front yard. That is an amazing capability. And they can also see local data, for example, what's happening at the school. They can learn, like I alluded to, about faraway areas. They could learn about New York City or maybe Ottawa, Canada, or some other place, wherever. They can learn about that. And they get more practice with numbers. To prepare our students like Jennifer, who will be going to college next year, these kids need experience in math and science with numbers, with data, with technical training on using these cutting-edge instruments. So that, to me, is definitely some of the pros of these devices. Unfortunately, there's always some cons. And the cons include technical difficulties. So sometimes the kids have had trouble setting them up at home. They're not computer repair masterminds. Sometimes the kids have, they've called me on my cell phone at 8 o'clock at night. Mr. Magny, the thing's not working. What do I do? So we try to figure it out. Obviously, you have to rely on the student being responsible and putting it in a place where it's not going to get damaged, like with an errant soccer ball or something. I mean, they are pretty sturdy, but it's still got to be placed in an area where it can receive the air, but also not get broken. And obviously another con is it needs continual power and Wi-Fi connection. So if something happens, the Wi-Fi goes down in your house, your data is done until that Wi-Fi connection is restored. So those are definitely some pros and cons that I have found in using the device. And the really cool thing that I'm excited about is, and Mary has inspired me, to be honest, to do this coaching project, which is now I'm going to be taking some of my expertise, I'll use that term very loosely, with the purple air filters, and I'm going to be having other teachers are going to be having the ability to now use these with their students, which I think is really exciting because, again, the network is going to spread. More teachers will get a hold of these, and then more students will get to learn what does it all mean. So I'm currently going to be working with 4 teachers starting next Wednesday, 1 from San Ynez, 2 from Santa Maria High School, and 1 from my own school at Pioneer Valley that decided to sign on for this project so that they, and again, we're getting, Mary's providing for these sensors. They're in the trunk of my car right now. And I'll be handing them out next week and helping those teachers get them set up. And then the network will continue. There'll be more data points for you guys to look at. And more kids will be learning about the air quality in their areas, which I think is pretty exciting. So thanks for listening. Any questions?
Any questions? Question?
So, Ms. Hernandez-Mora, how long have you worked for the APCD?
been about 2 years.
What, aside from the scientific findings and the research, what did you learn while you were doing this? Did you learn anything about yourself or about science or school?
I did. I learned that I want to be a civil engineer, so that's exciting for me because before I started this summer program, I did not know that I was this into science. I was considering more business or agriculture, but now science is really like one of my biggest passions. But I also learned how to public speak and how to present projects because I presented that project maybe like 50 times to a lot of different people, PhD scientists, and at the state level, there were many people that asked me so many different questions that I can answer about various different things.
Excellent.
Yes.
Where do you want to go to
Okay.
school next year?
Well, right now I just finished applying to school, and Mr. Magny and Mary actually asked me this question before, which is funny, but I am considering USC, and about 2 days ago, I just had a Harvard interview because I applied to Harvard, so that was exciting. And I did talk about the summer program that I did, and I talked about my state science fair win and everything. But right now, I applied to maybe 7 different schools, but USC is my top one.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Gino.
I want to thank Mr. Magny. I don't know how long, we've known each other, 5 years, 6 years, something like that.
Maybe more, yeah, around there.
I don't know if I got an email from you or a letter, so I went to his classroom, and that was a real treat. And so if ever you want to go into a classroom where you see the kids really engaged, and they even like the guy, so that's a plus.
I try.
And they have good things to say, but he's been such I think, a dynamo in our community to get kids, especially young women, really need to start math and science. I know that's really sexist, Mr. Adam, but I think it's really important for our young women to be really engaged in the math and sciences.
We can send you to re-education camp next.
But I want to thank you personally for all you do, Mr. Magny.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate it.
Mr. Adam.
Yeah, I just want to say, Ms. Hernandez-Mora, you are captivating and well-spoken, and probably give some of us older folks hope that the youth has their stuff in one sack and can take over after we mess the whole thing up. So you're impressive.
Thank you.
Thanks
I
for
value that
coming
very
in.
much.
Okay. Any questions? I'm sorry.
I just had a question. When you distribute these then to different schools throughout the valley in Santa Maria, will the students interact who are monitoring? Will that be a collaborative venture to some extent?
That's a great question. So this project is literally evolving as we speak. So when I first meet with the teachers, one of whom I've literally never met before, I'm going to ask them what they want to get out of the project. So the 4 teachers that signed up had to apply and were chosen by the county office of education. And so they were I didn't pick. They were given to me and said, okay, here's your people, now work with them. So literally next Wednesday when I meet with them, one of the things I'm going to ask is, what do you want to get out of this? I mean, I'm going to teach them how the machine works. I'm going to teach them how to get the data. I'm going to give them some sample activities, but it all depends on what they want. And you know what? That's a great idea. Maybe we can integrate that it all comes down to what the teachers are willing to do, but maybe there can be some communication among classrooms, schools, etc. It's a great idea. I mean, in today's digital world, I'm sure that can be worked out. So thank you for the suggestion.
Well, thank you for such an inspiring presentation today, and it is wonderful to see applied learning where it's not just theoretical in some other place, but you're able to bring it here and then compare to Rome or Ottawa or wherever. It's really exciting. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Santa Barbara, any questions? They're not paying attention.
No.
Director.
Just wanted to make sure we have one additional presentation on this item. We're fortunate to have representative from South Coast Air Quality Management District, Dr. Polidori. Is that how you pronounce your name? Nice to meet you, and thank you so much for making the trek up here. I know it was getting challenging with mudslide and all, but we're definitely happy that you were able to join us. South Coast has been able to secure a significant grant from the federal government, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that. They've been taking the lead of air districts here in California on the comparisons of different sensors and how it's changing the way we look and analyze air monitoring data from the traditional approach of a federal method to something that's very low cost that we all can have in our own backyard.
I just want to make one more comment directed to Jennifer there, and I appreciate what you've done. It reinforces my attitude. And could I ask by any, what junior high did you attend in Santa Maria? Oh, Ariana's? Oh, okay, that's okay. I'm a former educator at El Camino for 22 years. I thought, but there was many, I went through many examples of students like yourself, and congratulate you too also.
All right, thank you very much for inviting me today. Again, my name is Andrea Polidori. I am the Atmospheric Measurements Manager at the South Coast AQMD. And I drove for about 4 hours here, maybe to give a 10-minute talk, because I fully support this initiative and the great work that both Mary and Ricardo have been doing with the students like Jennifer. And and also to present some of the results from the evaluation of these low-cost monitors that we have been conducting at the South Coast for the past 3 years or so. So, as you already know, in the market nowadays you can find several products for measuring air quality that cost between $50 and, let's say, $500. And so back in 2014, we started asking the question, how accurate and precise and reliable are these devices? So I was fortunate enough to receive, some funds from the South Coast AQMD to start this AQ-SPEC program. AQ-SPEC stands for Air Quality Sensor Performance Evaluation Center. And basically, what we do, we try to either buy or lease or steal, borrow, whatever, all type of commercially available low-cost sensors that we can find, and then we do field testing and laboratory testing to see how they compare to more traditional measurements methods. So the AQ-SPEC has two components mainly: field testing, so we deploy some of these sensors, all of these sensors in the field, and we do a side-by-side comparison with much more expensive EPA-approved instruments over a period of about 2 months. And for those sensors that are not complete random number generators, we bring them back to the field, to the lab rather, where we have built this state-of-the-art environmental chamber. So as you might know, in Southern California, we have two different kinds of weather. It's either hot or hotter. So if we want to test these devices under different environmental conditions, you have to do it in the laboratory. So this chamber, it's one of its kind. It's the only one that is specifically developed for low-cost sensor testing in the United States. And here we have the ability to basically vary temperature and relative humidity conditions to reproduce environmental conditions you may find in Florida, Alaska, and everything in between. So we do particle testing and gaseous testing, so we are able to test for pretty much every air pollutant that you can think of. And after, this is my first commercial break, and after we have basically done this comparison in the field and in the lab, we publish the results in a dedicated website, which is not Facebook, but is becoming quite successful. Just to give you an idea, we get about 6,000 new visitors per month, which, for a governmental site is actually quite good. So there you can find all kind of information about our program, what we do, and information about these low-cost sensors, how they work. Sometimes we have videos that kind of teach you how to at least get started in the user operation of these sensors. And we also have a summary of the results, more technical presentation if you are more interested about, understanding the result, the details about, what we do. But, generally speaking, so far we have evaluated about 35 particle and gaseous sensors. And generally speaking, particle sensors, they work pretty well, actually, considering their price point. So, the purple air, in particular, that is the one that Jennifer was talking about before. It's the $200 monitors that is within 15% from a $20,000 EPA-approved instrument. So it costs 1,000 times less, but it is not perfect. But it's very good for understanding trends, for basically tracking spatial and temporal variability of PM 2.5 in particular. However, there are different cons. The sensor calibration is an issue. So every time that you receive, let's say, a batch of 100 of these sensors, that batch might not perform as well or might not compare as well with another batch of the same type of sensor. So we always recommend, if you're interested in large-scale deployment, to do a calibration at least on like 10% of whatever batch you are receiving. It doesn't really measure very small particles. You know, during wildfire situation, for example, you might even have combustion particles that are below 0.5 microns, so that purple air and other particle sensors do not detect those. And then there's all kind of software biases that I'm not going to bore you with today. So in terms of gaseous sensors, the picture is a little different. So if you want to measure ozone, CO or NO, that are viable solutions out there that don't cost that much and do a relatively good job. But nowadays, air toxics are becoming really the hot topic, and in particular VOC, H2S, and SO2. So if you want to measure, let's say, benzene or toluene or something that might be coming out of a refinery, so there's nothing out there that does a good job. There are some VOC sensors that cost quite a lot, but the performance compared to the price is really not worth it at this point. So what is next for AQSpec? We have been doing evaluation for a little over 3 years, maybe 3 years and a half. So everyone asks us, what is the best sensors? And that's always an incomplete question, I think. A better question is, what is the best question for the particular application that you have in mind? Just to give you an idea, there are $20 VOC monitors out there. As I said, they're not very accurate at all, but if the only thing you want to learn is whether there's no VOCs, there's some VOCs, or there's a lot of VOC, then the $20 VOC sensors is perfect for that type of application, right? So in this respect, we would like to upgrade the AQSpec from an evaluation program to a certification program, where finally we would like to be able to categorize all of these sensors in, based on their application, and we would like to be able to tell the public that, okay, if you want to use sensors for fence line monitoring or for permitting or for improve your network design, go ahead and use these because we have evaluated them and we've had them and we know that they work fine for that specific purpose. So most of the people in my group, me included, we have an academic background, and so we could not resist the temptation to deploy these sensors in the field and play around really with them. And so one of the first applications, we started this project back in 2016. So we deployed about 9 of these. These are not purple air, but they are still particle sensors. A couple of my staff basically built this solar power sensor device. But we deployed them at the fence line of a waste disposal facility. And now what we can do, we can monitor fugitive emissions from the facility 24/7 because it's located in a residential area, and there is a school that is about 200 feet downwind of the facility. So I'm sure that you are quite interested in this type of application for basically in Southern California at the moment we have a network of about 250 purple air sensors. We owned about 100 of them, and the remaining 150 is from other organizations or from citizen scientists. And we can really keep track of on the performance of the purple air that we own, but we don't really know how the other monitors are performing because we did not test them in advance. And they might be working fine or not. We don't know. But in general, when you have the power of this type of technology is in the numbers, right? So this type of massive deployment allows you to really understand where the smoke plume is going, how it's evolving, and whether or not it's impacting communities in the basin. So we really like to collaborate with local citizens that are interested in deploying PM monitors all over the basin. We encourage their use. We are always there to answer their questions. And now we are there is a dialogue between us and LAUSD. They are interested in actually deploying several hundred of these monitors in the San Fernando Valley, which is where I live, because it's not covered by this PM network at the moment. We also have some discussion with Weather Underground. I don't know if you know them, but they are interested in deploying several thousand of these in the South Coast. So last but not least, today I would like to tell you a few words about our EPA project. So back in 2014, we applied for this prestigious grant. It's a research grant. Not to brag, but let me brag a little. So as far as I know, this is the first time that a STAR grant was given to a governmental organization. So we are very proud of it, and we really want to do a good job. And that's how actually we got the conversation started with Mary and finally with Ricardo, because this grant is all about education. I think that Ms. Patino, if I'm not mistaken, she was stressing the importance of education. And I could not agree more. And I think that when it comes to projects like this, with the implementation of new technology, or the deployment of sensor for tracking wildfire or anything else that has to do with air pollution, involving your citizens and make sure that they at least know the basics of what's involved, the potential health effects related, let's say, to wildfire or anything else. That is extremely important. So this grant is all about education. As you can tell from the title, we want to engage, educate, and empower California communities in the use and application of low-cost sensors. We are working with several CAPCOA agencies, including the Bay Area. We have had several conversations with your agency about how to educate your schools on the use and application of these sensors. And finally, what we are trying to do basically is deploy at least 550 PM sensors and some of gaseous sensors too, all over California. So we would like to build this massive sensor network so that we can gain knowledge about what the citizen scientists think about and what communities think about the use and operation of these sensors before, during, and after the deployment. So, I mean, the final product of this grant will be, what we call a toolkit, which is comprised of a guidebook, videos, all sort of, educational material that can then be used by other communities all over the nation, as a reference to conduct this type of monitoring. And just a word of caution, not to discourage you, but, I always like to make people aware that everyone gets excited about the word low cost. Low cost doesn't mean cheap. And if you're using one sensor or even 5 or 10, the cost of your project is relatively low. But if you're trying to build like a massive sensor network like we are trying to do, there are costs associated with maintenance and calibration, sensor connectivity, data logging, validation, interpretation, and the list goes on and on and on. So what started as a low-cost sensor project, it's now a high-cost network study, so something to be aware of. And so again, thank you very much for inviting me here today to talk about a topic that I love very much. And also thanks on behalf of the AQ-SPEC team, and I would be happy to answer any question if you have any. Thank you.
Okay. We have any questions? I see.
I do over here. Since I watched the presentation, I won't ask you what the best sensors are, but I'll ask you what the best sensors are for measuring PM counts that you looked at. I saw a couple pictures in the certification one, so I assume that means there's a couple models who passed your threshold of evaluation.
Sure. So the purple layer also gives you 6 different fractions. So you can basically all particle sensors, they are basically optical counters. So they measure particle number, concentration, and then there are algorithms to convert the number concentration into mass concentration. But if you take a look at the raw data, basically you can get an idea of 6 different PM size fractions. So there are people now that are trying to basically use that type of information to maybe discover something about the potential sources, right? If you have a lot of, big particles, then it's likely that, I don't know, some sort of fugitive emissions like, from the disposal facility that I was telling you about before. If you have a lot of the numbers is the smallest fraction, maybe it's from some sort of combustion activities or something like that.
So how about what the best models are for small PM count?
There's another monitor that is called AlphaSense. It's been around for a while. I know that they are revising. They're possibly coming up with a different version. And they measure 16 different size fractions. It did not perform as well as the purple layer in our testing, but in terms of added value because of this 16 size fraction, it's something that you may want to evaluate.
Thank you so much.
Director Mosby?
Yeah, one of the hottest topics, probably in California, starting the first of this year, is monitoring the terpene levels of some of the new agricultural crops, meaning the cannabis crop. Is there a monitor that's good at monitoring that you know of?
Not that I know of.
No?
No, it depends. It's always, you may want to select a sensor that maybe measure something that is a surrogate of whatever you want to measure, right? So if it is, in your case, if there's a lot of PM2.5 or PM10 emissions, then a PM sensors might be appropriate. But, if you want to go down to the specific, you want to measure exactly a particular compound, then, your choices are very much restricted.
You might be able to get a grant for that one, because that's going to be a real hot topic, especially in the Carpinteria area, right? I mean, it's a hot topic.
Sure.
You may have to wait until it's converted into smoke and then catch it as a PM.
I see no more questions. Thank you. Thank you very much for information. Yes. You can, yay. Okay. So, report and received. And we will move to item number
7.
a little, maybe a photo op or. Okay, moving on to item number 7.
Item number 7 is to receive an update on the statewide wood smoke reduction pilot program and potential changes to the district's local program to allow participation in the statewide program.
Today, Ben Ellenberger will be providing a presentation. He's the manager of our T division, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention that this will be the last presentation for Ben. He's made the decision to go on beyond the APCD and pursue other professional opportunities. So we are in the process of filling his position. We're sad to see him go, but we are thankful that he has the opportunity to present one more time to your board today. This is something that we've been talking about as far as the statewide wood smoke reduction program, and we're actually getting close to the time when the State Air Resources Board and CAPCO are getting all the details together. So Ben will be presenting on that.
Okay, Ben. I guess we won't have lunch at the Simpatia anymore, will we?
I'll miss that. I appreciated that. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. As Aaron said, this is an informational presentation. The state is developing a statewide pilot program for residential wood smoke reduction. And we as a district, we've been operating our local program since early 2017. So this will just be an update on how our program's going and some information about what we're expecting from the state program, with the intention to bring a revised program to the board for your consideration later. So I'll just go over some background. I'll talk a little bit about what we expect to be in the statewide pilot program. I'll compare that to what we're doing with our local program now, so some things we might have to change if we want to participate in the state program, and then talk about the next steps. So the background, why we're doing a local program right now is really neighborhood impacts and the local health impacts from wood smoke, from fireplaces and fire inserts. Of course, it's not this year, but in a normal year, wood smoke from fireplaces and inserts is about 1/3 of the wintertime PM 2.5 that we get in the county. As you've heard, the health impacts from wood smoke, from carbon, from ROCs, from NOx and CO, that can reduce lung function. It can exacerbate heart and lung disease, and it can trigger asthma. And this little chart on the right here just compares how much fine particulates, or the PM 2.5, that gets put out for the amount of heat you get. And so if you look at a fireplace or an uncertified wood stove, for the amount of heat they put out a really significant amount of fine particulate pollution. Whereas then if you can shift to generating that heat from gas, you have much lower emission rates of the fine particulates for the amount of heat that it's putting out. So our program, which your board approved, we began in early 2017. We're operating as a pilot program. The total program spending limit's $42,000. And so we haven't done really extensive outreach because it is a pretty limited scope program. Most of our outreach was doing a news release and really working through the local distributors and using them to really advertise it in the community. Despite that, we've had pretty good response. We have pretty steady stream of people applying under the program. We've approved 31 projects to date, and we offer either $500 or $1,000 incentive, whether people are just removing a stove or insert or replacing it with a new natural gas, electric, or propane heating insert. And so based on our budget, we could do 9 more projects this fiscal year. The statewide pilot program that's under development right now it's based on guidelines that the Air Resources Board has put out. So the Air Resources Board has put out the guidelines, and they've identified $250,000 in funding for Santa Barbara County that would be available to us. And the way it would be structured is CARB would provide the funds to CAPCOA, the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association, and then CAPCOA would work with the local districts to distribute those funds to the local districts on a reimbursement basis. So if we participated, we would do projects. We would fund those projects through our own funds, and then be reimbursed from CAPCOA. And the goals that the Air Resources Board set when this program was started, first was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from uncertified wood stoves, wood inserts, or fireplaces that are used as a primary heat source. And so the main focus for the state program is the greenhouse gas benefits, and recognizing then that along with those, we get the direct local health benefits also from reducing the fine particulate concentrations in neighborhoods. The other goal that is important is to maximize benefits to households in disadvantaged or low-income communities and to low-income households. And the goal statewide is to distribute 75% of the total funding statewide to those populations. And then the final is to reduce the exposure to local toxic air contaminants and criteria air pollutants. So based on those goals, the Air Resources Board and the guidelines established a number of program requirements. And a lot of them overlap with what we're doing already. But I wanted to highlight these requirements. The first is that any units that received funds, it would have to be replacing a unit that's a primary source of heat for somebody. So it couldn't be a unit that that somebody just uses once or twice a year for ambiance. It would have to be an uncertified existing wood stove. There are wood stoves and wood inserts that are certified by the EPA as low PM emission units, and so state funds wouldn't be available to replace one of those. The installers have to have a written agreement with the Air District to participate in the program. Right now, what we do is we check that the installers have a license and that they've gotten any building permits that they need. But we don't make them have a written agreement with us to participate in the program. And part of that is we actually reimburse the homeowner or the renter who pays for the project. They'll pay the installer, then we pay the homeowner or the renter. The statewide program would allow us to reimburse the installers directly. Consistent with the state goals to get 75% of the funds to low-income communities or low-income individuals, we have to target outreach to those communities and households. And also, because it's supposed to be targeted towards low-income people, we may reimburse the full cost of a basic replacement. Our program right now is a $1,000 reimbursement for the replacement. We've been seeing the full costs of these running from $3,000 to $5,000 by the time they've bought the unit, gotten a permit, and paid for the labor for the installation. So the state guidelines would have us identify the cost of a basic replacement without the bells and whistles, identify the full cost of that, and we could reimburse up to that full amount. If somebody chose to participate and wanted to get a fancier unit, they could do that, but they'd have to pay for the difference. This is all right. Well, this is not showing up very well on the slide here, but I just wanted to highlight what the areas are that are designated as low-income communities in the county, and this is based on the state census tract level, and it's also set by county based on the cost of living in the county, and so it's in the northwestern part of the county. It's Guadalupe, most of the western part of Santa Maria, most of Lompoc, Cuyama, then Isla Vista, a portion of Nolita, and most of downtown Carp south of the 101 qualify as those communities based on the state guidelines. So where we are right now, CARB and CAPCOA are working to finalize the memorandum of understanding to operate the program, and for then CAPCOA to receive the funds from CARB. Once that's done, any districts that wanted to participate would have to adopt a program that meets the state guidelines. CAPCOA would then establish agreements with the districts that wanted to participate that would then allow CAPCOA to reimburse us as we ran the program. Again, we would have to kick off the program with targeted outreach to low-income communities, low-income individuals. And then on an ongoing basis, there's $5 million identified statewide for this pilot program. Separately, CARB has been directed to begin work on an ongoing statewide program and to coordinate with districts, receive district feedback from the districts, how this pilot program's going, identify maybe any changes that might need to be made from the pilot program to an ongoing state program. And so with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Any questions? I'm not going to ask Santa Barbara because they're gone. Director Adams.
Oh, my. They slipped away, didn't they?
That's why I said. Director Adams.
That's why we should encourage everybody to be in the same room so we can all shame each other into staying. Anyway, we're in attainment on all these constituents at this point, right?
We attained federal standards for PM 2.5 and PM 10. We don't meet the state standard for PM 10.
And we're in non-attainment transitional for ozone.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you, are you?
So, but,
no.
I'm sorry.
You still on? Still have the floor?
Yeah, I mean, what we're chasing around here is really de minimis, is it not?
It's, yeah, with this, it's not so much looking at impacts countywide and the total massive emissions that they're going countywide. It's really looking at, areas that might have really localized impacts in neighborhoods. But yeah, the total tons of PM 2.5 that you're talking about is not large.
What does 2.5 do in the air?
So 2.5 is actually the measurement. It's 2.5 microns, and I forget if that's thousandths of a millimeter or hundredths, so it's very small.
Yeah.
And so the PM 2.5, it's small enough that it can stay in the air a little bit longer. It's because it's so small, it doesn't settle out as fast. And in terms of health impacts,
Well, right, but let's not. What I was really getting at there was, what does it do when it gets in the air? You know, how does it perform aeronautically, if you will? And you know, if we're trying to improve the air quality in a neighborhood, are we really improving the air quality in the neighborhood? Because, or is it going much further than any real anything you could call a neighborhood after it gets entrained in whatever air it gets entrained in? Because that thing's going to rise in the air, that particle is going to rise in the air with the heat.
Yeah. And
then as the heat dissipates, it's not necessarily going to settle back out.
Oh, that is a good point. Under normal conditions, if you don't have an inversion layer, you know, if you have a hot exhaust from the stove, and as you get higher in the altitude, the air temperature gets lower and lower, then that hot air will keep rising and it'll spread, and it's less likely to impact people at ground level. What you can get, and this is actually a fairly common situation in the winter, is if you have an inversion, where if you have a layer of warmer air up high, what you can see is that hot air will come out of a smokestack, come out of a chimney, and hit that inversion layer, and then it can recirculate and stay down at lower levels where it can impact people. So it really depends on the conditions at that time. And again, it's actually inversion layers in this area in the winter are not uncommon.
So if somebody had a fire, I mean, even if, let's just say, worst case scenario, if a particle got up into a inversion layer, I mean, what's the odds of that particle being experienced by anybody within, say, a mile of the fire?
My expectation is for a single fireplace, it's not impacting a mile area. It's a smaller impact. I can't say that in areas that will do, some places that have much more severe wintertime pollution will actually do voluntary no burn days, or even, I know San Joaquin Valley does mandatory no burn days, and they have seen in those days where they don't have burning, they will measure lower levels of PM10, PM2.5 at their monitoring stations on those days compared to days when people are using fireplaces.
Yeah, and generally speaking, particulate matter, whether it's PM10 or 2.5, has a more localized impact than what we see with ozone, where the formation of ozone can be miles down the road in different communities. We notice more localized impacts just with these wood source fireplaces.
Well, I would think that there was a background level, and even when if there was a mandatory no burn day, for instance, you're still detecting PM10 that got entrained in air at some point previously and got to a detection mechanism at that point. You know, it's not necessarily it's not all going to settle out that same day that it gets burned, right? I mean, it's entrained in the air mass, and at that point, it's sort of divine intervention as to when it falls out, right?
Right. Yeah, that's PM10, PM2.5. Eventually, after it's emitted into the air, eventually it will settle out. And again, this isn't the only source. You also get PM2.5, PM10 from vehicles, both from the engine and then dust off brakes and tires.
Well, see, that's what I'm kind of getting at here.
Yeah.
You're and I don't know how many tons. It would be interesting to me how much per ton we think we're going to save, by doing this, that it costs, you know what I'm saying? Because you're really talking about some de minimis amount that's sort of contributing to the background level, but it's not really that significant in our area. Maybe, when you get into a confined airspace like the valley, it does become important at that point. But, in our area, I would, and if there's the money out there, there's the money out there, and if we're going to spend it this way, okay, fine. But, per ton of material that's taken out of the air, it's probably among the higher cost.
Well, we could demonstrate the cost effectiveness based on the projects that the $42,000 that we've been able to secure board approval on, and the conversion from, I think most of them have been open hearths. Going from open hearth, we asked information on the typical amount that's burned each year from the participant, so we can calculate the cost effectiveness associated with those projects and bring that back. And when we bring this item back, I think what's so important about this project, it's a voluntary project, and it's coming down from the state level. And my goal with trying to situate Santa Barbara County just in a situation where we have a pilot project that we've been able to operate, that we've been able to demonstrate is successful. So when the State Air Resources Board and CAPCOA actually get to a point where they have the $5 million ready to allocate, we're well positioned, if it's your board's desire, to participate in that and try to provide a voluntary mechanism to reduce the particulate matter. Another aspect of this project is it reduces the outdoor PM, but also the indoor air quality is improved when you change from a wood burning device to a natural gas. And depending on the cost of natural gas in your area, it could be a comfort aspect as well for the residents in those homes. So just something to consider. I think it's a positive in the sense that it's targeting the low-income individuals in our area, those communities, and it does go up to the full cost of replacement, something that we weren't even considering with our own pilot project.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we can demonstrate that per ton of emissions that we're removing, it's efficient, mm-hmm. then that'll help me to more enthusiastically support it.
Perfect. Thank you.
I have a question, and then I'll paint a scenario that may kind of relate to this last question. The question I have is, you mentioned the areas where it's low-income qualified, and I don't remember if you said any parts of the city of Santa Barbara, particularly east side or downtown?
Oh, yes. Actually, most of downtown Santa Barbara, that census district does qualify. It's the west side and most of lower downtown, all the way over to the east side and to Salinas Street, I think, is the eastern boundary there.
Okay. And then the scenario I throw out, I'm not completely familiar with the geographic boundaries of your district or the census, but in this area we have, in some parts, 63 units per acre, and you probably have 63 acres per units in part of your district. And right up against the 101 freeway where you have stop and go traffic for several hours a day. So not only are they getting the recycled air from the freeway, which is not particularly fresh, and they're getting this particulate matter. So if you have several people with chimneys emitting these, and you have this inversion layer, it all really adds up. So it's a completely different situation than you might have even just a mile away on the hillside in Santa Barbara. So it does really come down to these microclimates. Plus you add in there the vulnerability of that population. That population is characterized, we have a lot of seniors, and then we have a lot of infants, which are the most vulnerable to air pollution. And then we have a lot of socioeconomic issues, and we have a monolingual, non-English speaking population who have difficulties getting access to factors that would mitigate these problems. So I think it could work, the math maybe works out better there than it would in other places. And again, it comes down to the science, which we'd have to see a study and an economic study on how much this costs. And that's part of the reason I was asking, have we seen economic numbers on the fire? Like, how much did that cost society? Because until you know the cost, it's hard to determine how much you want to spend. Seems like maybe $1,000 to remove a fireplace that's one of the worst polluting would be worth it if it stops 1 or 2 kids from having deformed lungs, because I think that's what happens with the particulate matter for young kids, is it stops healthy young lung development. So I would just throw that out there.
Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion? None? So this is a report and receive? Correct. Okay, we're moving on to item 9, announcements. Any announcements? Board?
Can I just make one comment? I know we just went real fast over the administrative items, but congratulations on your audit report. It's good to see a good, strong report. I know you guys worked, we did it fast and over, and I know you guys have hours and hours in there, so I just wanted to make a quick comment about that.
Good point. Thank you. Thank you all for your hard work. All right. No other announcements? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? So moved. There's all those in favor? Can we do that? Can we do that? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? None. Got to throw that in there, man.